What is up, History TV? We are back for another video. This one is History Summarized Sicily. So let's get into this. And yeah, this is going to be a good one. It's, always Sarcastic Productions. And, we always love that on this channel. And, I love history a lot, so it's fun to watch history. Also, videos that you can always put videos in the comment section that you want me to react to. Also love science videos too. Those are fun to watch. So yeah, any of those types of videos. Also, I like it was this one channel, I just can't think of the name, that puts science and gaming together. It was How Fast is Deadeye or something like that. And I really can't think of the name. I remember, was it Kyle something? I'm trying to think of the name, but yeah. Anyway, subscribe to the channel. Want to get to 10K subscribers. I do want to get to 10K subscribers, so subscribe to the channel. I don't know when we're gonna hit that. I would like to hit it soon, but I don't know how quick am I gonna be able to get to that, but yeah, let's get into it. Also, yeah, the reason why also I haven't been making videos, if you haven't watched any of my other videos recently, is because I have to send back my PC that I just got a month ago because it crapped on me. The power supply shut down and crashed, so yeah, gotta send that back. It should come back in maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks, and then I'll get back to streaming every day, and also I'll be more consistent with streaming too. So just subscribe to I would say just follow the Twitch channel. Click the heart when you click the link in down description, so that way you can see when I do stream, because I still am going to stream, just not as often, and I'll be probably streaming Genshin Impact for right now, since I do have that on my PS4. So yeah, let's get into it, and let's play this video. Also, I was gonna say something, kind of forgot. Oh yeah, my Q&A video is coming out this week, so if it's not already out, it's gonna be out either before this video comes out or something like that, or after. Show some love to it, and if you have any questions too, that you want me to put in the video if I haven't made it yet, you can always go to my post that I've made about it a week ago and ask some questions. But yeah, all right, and play. Oh wait, play.
Despite the best attempts of literally every civilization in history, they all fall down eventually, and that's just part of the game. You rise, you fall, business is business. Now, sometimes there comes a rare society so catastrophically unfortunate that even their own culture forgets that they existed. And that becomes doubly tragic when it's a really cool one, too. Because when it comes to Italy, we can talk a lot, a lot about the northy bits with all the Vembus and Forms, but meanwhile, popular memory of the millennia-spanning history of southern Italy is buried under 2 tons of Neapolitan pizza, mafia movies, and icky World War II stuff. In one of Europe's weirdest cases of collective amnesia, a reputation for poverty now dominates a region that was known for multiculturalism, magnificent architecture, and exquisite intellect. Not just another case of this place was shiny and then it wasn't. The civilization of southern Italy and Sicily was so distinct and impressive that their later neglect is far more tragic than their actual downfall. So, to find out what was so special about Naples and Sicily and see how their name got stomped into the dust, let's do some history. Being smack in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, Sicily has a distinctly social history, starting with Greece. In the ancient period, the south of Italy was packed full of Greek cities built by settlers from the east. With natural resources aplenty and lots of room to grow, several colonies became richer and sometimes even more powerful than the mainland cities. This, the mighty Athenian Empire discovered the hard way. The people of this Western Hellenic civilization were known as Italiotai, but the land was known as Magna Graecia according to their neighbors, the Romans. This corner of the Hellenic world happens to be the young Roman Republic's first contact with Greek culture, and needless to say, it left a strong impression. Magna Graecia was Rome's entryway to the Greek East, and, as it happened, the accidental flashpoint for their conflicts with Carthage, thus beginning the very apt visual metaphor of Sicily getting kicked. After Rome's conquest of the Mediterranean, southern Italy and Sicily produced much of the empire's grain and were well positioned for maritime trade and Greco-Roman cultural exchange. One metric empire later, Italy was Byzantine. Briefly. Though they reconquered the peninsula from the Goths in the mid-500s, their work was undone with almost insulting swiftness by a Germanic people called the Lombards, who poured over the Alps in the decade after and made the peninsula a checkerboard, carving out duchies all across the north and in pockets of the south. A few centuries later, the new threat came from across the sea, as Muslim conquerors gradually wrestled Sicily from the Byzantines over the course of the 800s. So by the year 1000, the situation in Italy goeth thusly. In the north, the Lombard duchies became domains of the Holy Roman, German Empire, and the northern Byzantine territories of Venice and the Papal States had become independent. So broadly, the north was chill. Meanwhile, southwards, the Byzantines are holding on to the pointy bits of the boot in Calabria and Apulia, while the Duchy of Naples is technically still a Byzantine state, but is essentially on its own, just sailing around for happy merchant fun times. Inland, the Lombard duchies of Benevento, Salerno, and Capua were locked in a cycle of breaking and reassembling, and, of course, Sicily belonged to the Saracens. The south was having quite a rough time. And then the Normans came. As if our cast list isn't complex enough, our next players come from the opposite end of Europe on the north coast of France. There, Scandinavian Viking raiders had been generously bribed by the Frankish king to sit down, stay put, and stop attacking Paris. These Northmen, or Nordmani, became Christians and learned French, but maintained that characteristically Scandinavian desire to sail places and fight stuff. So they became extremely successful mercenaries around their home base in Normandy, as well as in the south of Italy, where, given the state of things, it was a good time to be in the mercenary business. In the early 1000s, they fought for the Lombards against the Byzantines, and for the Byzantines against the Lombards. Now, exploiting conflict for financial gain is distressingly standard practice, but the Normans had a knack for getting land out of the deal.
So that changed a lot of things then.
So in 1043, they gained a slice of Apulia, and then they kept on going. The Normans had the best army in the south by far, and over the decades they chipped away at the Lombards, Byzantines, Sicilian Muslims, and, a couple of times, even the Pope. By 1091, Duke Roger I conquered all of Sicily and southern Italy except for a tiny sliver on the Bay of Naples. In 1130, the Pope crowned Roger II as King of Sicily, and 7 years later, the Normans nabbed Naples to cap the set. So, having consolidated the entire South for the first time in half a millennium, what kind of kingdom was Roger working with? Simply put, the king and his royal court were multilingual, and they needed to be. The mainland was home to French-speaking Normans, Byzantine Greeks, the descendants of the Lombards who spoke an early form of Italian, while Sicily was sporting a mix of Muslim Arabic speakers and post-Byzantine Grek boys. This multicultural atmosphere was a product of circumstance, but Duke Roger I took it as an advantage and ran with it. So the young Roger II grew up learning from Greek and Muslim tutors, and upon becoming king, he doubled down by setting out a new legal code in 1140 which established equal rights for all subjects regardless of religion or ethnicity. Drawing inspiration from Norman French law, Islamic law, and Byzantine law from as far back as Justinian, this hybrid code built a centralized Norman state but specifically allowed for local customs to pick up where statewide laws left off. That said, this was still very much a monarchy and the king had final say on everything, but it's remarkable that Roger cultivated such an enthusiastically plural.
The Norman King Roger is depicted like a Byzantine with the Latin royal title Regios Rex written above him in Greek. You don't just see that. You just don't see that every day. That's insane.
Pluralistic state. And against the context of the Crusades actively going on in the Holy Land, Norman Sicily is utterly wild, a multicultural home for scholars and traders from all over. To that end, Norman coinage was stamped in Latin and Arabic and became extremely popular for long-distance trade in every direction. Sicilian wheat and citrus exports were off the charts, and all that cash paid for quite an impressive building program back home. When the Normans arrived, southern Italy's architecture mirrored its linguistic diversity, with Byzantine architecture here, Islamic architecture over there, and Romanesque sprinkled in between. They would soon realize that it looks really good when put together. And so, the multiculture of Norman Italy took a physical form in buildings like the Cappella Palatina in the Royal Palace of Palermo. The structure of the church is a Latin cross, but nearly every surface is drenched in golden Byzantine mosaics, including the very Byzantine dome. Meanwhile, classical Corinthian columns are capped with Arabic arches which lead up to colorful Islamic stalactite vaulting on the ceiling and to inscriptions written in Greek, Latin, and Arabic. Lots of fancy words to say the place is freaking gorgeous, and the synthesis of all these different styles represents the great accomplishment of Norman Italian society. Another major outlet was scholarship. With simultaneous access to Greek, Latin, and Arabic sources in one place, plus local geniuses in every field and branch of knowledge, southern Italy might have been one of the single smartest places in the medieval world at the time. And everyone could participate, as, for example, many Muslims worked in
Sicily's multi-ethnic cast of scholars included a vibrant Jewish community. First welcome in the Arab period, they remained an important fixture in Norman society. Oh, that's nice.
the royal court, Arab mathematicians handled finance, and the cartographer Muhammad al-Idrisi spent 15 years working on a map of the world for King Roger. The Tabula Rogeriana was the most accurate and detailed map ever made, and in addition to a circular drawing of the world, al-Idrisi made a mammoth 70-piece chart of the northern hemisphere, with each subsection described at length in the whole-ass encyclopedia that he made alongside the maps. The book was written in Arabic and in Latin, though everyone at the court could read both anyway, and this astounding feat of scholarship pairs like a fine Sicilian wine alongside the Cappella Palatina in illustrating what made Norman Italy so uniquely fascinating. So, here's what went wrong. The royal Hauteville family stayed in power through the rest of the 1100s, doing their thing, occasionally dabbling in pointless wars with the Byzantines, and ultimately sealing their fate with some dodgy marriages that handed the crown to the royal German Hohenstaufen family in 1194. And the next century sees Sicily pivot away from the Mediterranean to instead face north toward mainland Europe, and this resulted in the steady disassembly of everything the Hautevilles worked for. In 1224, all Muslims were expelled from Sicily to Apulia, but they were kicked out of the kingdom entirely at the end of the century. Because while the Hohenstaufen family were at least half Norman and had some respect for the kingdom's history, the rulers who came after were not at all, and thus had none. In 1266, the whole south was conquered by the French Count Charles of Anjou, but 16 years later, Sicily was invaded by the King of Aragon in the War of the Sicilian Vespers. Big mess, lots of stabbing, and the result in 1302 is that Sicily belongs to Aragon while the mainland stays French. For the next few centuries, the histories of Sicily and Naples diverge in their politics, style, and language, but it's the same basic story. Dominion by an outside state that didn't understand the territory and couldn't enforce a strong central authority through anything but violence. Power fell to local cities and aristocratic estates, and while this problem dated back to the Hautevilles, they could actually keep their barons in line. Here, not so much. Although the Sicilians may have welcomed Spanish rule as a relief from the domineering hatred of the Angevin French, the result of being pleasantly ignored is that they were largely neglected. And as Sicily entered the 1300s tethered to distant Iberia rather than Italy, they would miss the Renaissance entirely. The Cold War between the Aragonese and the Angevins was broken when Aragon conquered Naples in 1443, so in 1494 the King of France marched an army down the peninsula in an attempt to retake Naples. And they did. For a year, but Aragon came back, fighting, and by 1504 the south was firmly Spanish and the story settles down. In the south. In the north, the fighting continued, subjecting those poor defenseless scamps to 65 years of invasions. Wild times, way off topic. With a few brief exceptions, Sicily and Naples remains loosely ruled by Spanish royals and locally controlled by the Spanish nobles who had vast amounts of land and wealth. After the discovery of the New World, southern Italy had stopped being particularly useful, but with Spain now drowning in empire money, they could afford to spruce the place up a bit. In 1693, eastern Sicily suffered a devastating earthquake, so with space to build and cash to burn, the aristocracy and the church got to work on their new digs. Entire cities were replanned from scratch, and this rebuilt Sicily took on its own flavor of Baroque architecture. It's got classical elements if you squint, but it's dense, swooshy, and very expensive looking. And yet, the extravagant grandeur of southern Italian architecture did nothing to make life better for the impoverished masses. I can't imagine why. To make matters even worse for Sicilians, after the Napoleonic Wars, the kingdoms of Naples and Sicily were combined into the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, ruled from Naples, much to the disappointment of the Sicilians, who were now doubly second-class citizens. And this was the state of the South on the eve of Italian unification. Very long story short, Giuseppe Garibaldi and 1,000 of his buddies took advantage of a revolt in Sicily to march across the island and up to Naples to help annex the South for the new Kingdom of Italy in 1861. But the trickier task was combining the North and the South into the same country, because although they were culturally close enough, their economies were centuries apart. North Italy with the Industrial Revolution, South Italy with some farms, which by this point were hopelessly outcompeted by American grain. Northerners naturally saw themselves above the inferior, barbaric South, and so Southern Italians started looking for the exit, especially after Europe's most destructive earthquake ever struck Sicily in 1908. Facing all of this and lacking in any meaningful help from the government, South Italy developed its own mechanism of enforcing the mafia. Taking advantage of the power vacuum left behind by the old aristocracy, the mafia informally governed the South through private dealings and violence. In the 1920s, the mafia met their match in Mussolini, who thought that stomping them out would be good PR for the fascist party. And it kinda worked, but the alternative wasn't great, so in World War II, the Allies buddied up with the mafia for their march up the peninsula against the fascists. And at the risk of dragging us into modern history, that is where we'll cap the winding tale of Sicily and southern Italy. They strike the unfortunate balance of being always in the middle, but nearly always in the background. Yet, for as much of Sicilian history was written for them by outside powers, it remains a product of its people, from Magna Graecia to today, but especially during the Norman Golden Age. While Sicily was no stranger to prosperity after the Hauteville kings, those riches lacked meaning. The Normans found a region locked in conflict at a time when holy war was all the rage, and forged a new type of state, built on the quintessentially Norman idea that culture is harmonic, that it gets exponentially more beautiful when combined and transformed into something that each culture could never have been on its own. And the tragedy of Sicily is how no one else realized that. And sure, this happens to be exactly my aesthetic, but how could anyone miss this? With those maps and mosaic domes? I swear, Normans are OP. Nerf the
But yeah, that was really good. I was learning a lot about Sicily because I didn't know about it a lot. So I didn't know about Sicily a lot, so that was fun. Yeah, I want to learn more. Honestly, I want to learn more about like Italy, like just each individual part of Italy. But yeah. So yeah, put videos in the comment section section I'm going to react to. Yeah, so I'll talk to you. Also, subscribe to the channel, 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, talk to you guys in the next video. Also, follow me on Twitch. Click the link in the description and then click the heart. And yeah, I'll be on there at some point this weekend. Talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.